You ever do one of these challenges? One of the ones that you saw online, 7 day challenge, 21-day challenge, 30-day challenge, right? It doesn't really matter what the challenge is. Pretty much every online coach has some type of challenge that they've run at some point or another, right? It could be a diet challenge, a weight loss challenge, a muscle building challenge, or a mental health challenge, or train your brain challenge, things like this, right? You've got the fitness ones that have the most intense titles, right? The 30-day cut and shred, right? The 30-day shred and burn and torch and melt, right? It's all of these really aggressive, violent terms, right? that they're named after. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about that today because actually thinking in terms of like these challenges over these specific durations is actually a really powerful technique to use in your life. The problem is 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, 30 days is not really enough. And it's not like an end goal, right? It's not a meaningful end goal at the end of the 7 days, the 21, the 30 days, this type of thing. It's more so of a setup for something else. So what happens is when you go through a challenge like this, most people, whatever results or progress they make during the challenge, they lose that progress just as quickly as they've gained it. So this leads me into talking a little bit about my method, which is the 12-week method or the 12-week challenge. I've pretty much failed at most things in my life until adopting this method, right? This is how big of a deal this is. Now, currently, today, I think of everything in quarters, right? So you have an annual plan, and then your annual plan gets split up into 4 quarters, and each quarter is 12 weeks. Now, technically, a year is 52 weeks. So you can run 4 quarters, and that will pretty much give you around 48 weeks. So you have like an additional month. You may have like a week in between quarters that you can use as a transitionary period. Now, in the early phases, in the early stages of Tribe by Noir, right, I started off my personal 12-week challenge with first coming up with a concrete methodology that I was going to start with. When I first went plant-based back in, I don't know, a little before 2014, but I started Tribe by Noir as like a private building in 2014. It was plant-based before that. But I had to come up with a solid methodology, right, that I can explain step by step in a very clear and concise fashion. And I had to take that methodology and I had to be able to execute it seamlessly in a very simple way. So I started off with my whole food, high carb, plant-based diet methodology, right? And so basically, I started with calculating my calories according to my BMR and then added on non-exercise related activity and then added on the caloric burn or the general caloric burn that I would get from, let's say, cardio, walking 10,000 steps a day, resistance training, and all of that type of stuff. And I would get like my target caloric burn, right? And then I would eat in accordance to that. And then my calories, I would basically base my calories and my macros, or more so basing my macros off of my lean mass in kilograms. So everything was adjusted for grams per kilogram of lean mass. Okay. So the metrics were carbohydrates would be anywhere from 50 to 65% carbs, and the rest would be split between fat and protein. Protein was typically between 10 and 15%, like a range. So the sweet spot would be somewhere around 12%, and then dietary protein was the rest. Dietary protein would be anywhere from 10% to 16%, something like this. So I had a range, and these were the ranges for all of the macros. And then once I've had the macros, now I can get into food choice. And food choice would be split up into 5 food categories, right? So fruits, vegetables, nuts and seeds, whole grains and starches, and legumes, right? Those are the 5 key categories, the non-negotiables. And then there was a miscellaneous, like an extra food category, which was fungi or mushrooms, different types of mushrooms, oysters, shiitake, bella mushrooms, this type of thing, right? Not necessary for the diet plan. It's just like an optional thing that you can use in one of the one pot meals, right? And then for each food category, I would have like around a minimum of 2 food choices to a maximum of like 5 food choices within each category to give me the diversity. And then finally, I had to hit the whole color spectrum. Okay, so the color spectrum being violet, red, orange, yellow, green. Okay, so every day I would have foods from each of those color categories, and that was my methodology pretty much there. After you lock in the diet plan, you come up with 3 different diet plans to pack into the one whole diet plan and rotate the options, and then finally would be establishing an eating window. Okay, so I would eat starting at this time and ending at this time, right? So I had a time I started eating, a time I finished eating, and then a time I went to bed. Okay, and this fit neatly into my work schedule, and I was a personal trainer in a gym at the time, right? So being on point with my schedule was especially important because I would start work at like 5:30 in the morning with my first session, and would typically get workouts done around, depending on when my sessions ended, it could be 10 o'clock, 10:30, or 11, something like this, right? So that was the schedule, and I ran that really solidly with no deviation in these 12-week intervals. And in doing that, this completely revolutionized my life. It has given me some of the most successful weeks, months, years of my life running this kind of 12-week methodology where you lock in a set of behavioral patterns and you don't deviate from those patterns for 12 weeks straight. And you count and measure everything, right? So get a tape measure, you do your circumference measurements, you get on your scale, right? Body fat, water, weight, all of that type of stuff. Your training, right? You count your sets, reps, weight, all that kind of stuff. Your training sessions are at the same time every day. You wake up, you go to bed at the same times every day. You eat at the same times every day. Very regimented. This works extremely well. And if you've been struggling with achieving your goals in your life, this is a really good mindset to get into. You live from challenge to challenge. Not a 7-day challenge, not a 21-day or a 30-day challenge, but 12 weeks, right? So basically in a block of 3 months. I don't use the term 3 months because 3 months can seem like a long time in your head, right? So you live week by week. It's easier to count, right? So that was my methodology. And I pretty much took that methodology and applied it to every area of my life. Training was the same thing, right? So one of my most effective training plans was the upper-lower split, okay? The upper-lower split and the push-pull leg split. Upper lower was 4 days, push pull leg was 3-day split. And I would alternate between those two. So if I had 4 quarters of my year, 2 of the quarters would be devoted to an upper lower split, and 2 of the quarters would be for the push pull split or the push pull leg split, right? And it worked phenomenally. Very minimal, basically only around like 4 exercises per workout, 6 at the most. If there was 6 exercises, it was for smaller muscle groups, some type of accessory work, but to a very minimal degree. So we're talking about getting the workouts done like around 45 minutes. This is when I was doing much higher training volume at the time. So my workouts were like around 45 minutes. Depending on how much rest time I took in between sets, the workout could be like a whole hour. Way different than what I'm doing now. Because instead of doing 3 to 4 sets per exercise, I'm like 1 set per exercise now. So my workouts now are like 20 to 30 minutes per training session. But we're just talking about the methodology, living from quarter to quarter in those 4 quarters, right? The most important thing was the mindset and self-development aspect and applying a 12-week method to that, having a solid methodology for that. That's the piece. You need that piece, because if you do not have your psychology handled, okay, it's going to be very difficult to stick to your challenge without deviating. Because the thing is, when you run this 12-week challenge, it's not going to be perfect. There'll be a little ugliness. Some weeks will be better than others, right? Maybe you went to bed on time, but sleep was a little dicey. It was a little shaky. You kept waking up in the middle of the night repeatedly. Sometimes your sleep is just off, right? You may have some good days, some bad days, things like this, but you don't deviate, right? If anything, you double down on your strategy. You tighten up a little bit so that you can execute the daily tasks of the challenge more effectively, but you don't deviate, right? So the mindset and self-development, and basically for me, I have 3 steps of our mindset and self-development. The 3 steps: discovery is number 1, assessment is number 2, and actualization is number 3. Discovery. Now, when I did discovery and was coming up with discovery, this took me 12 weeks. Right? This is one of the first things that I did, actually, was discovery. I did this even before the diet plan stuff and all that. And discovery is basically establishing a strong relationship with yourself. We live our entire lives from a first person perspective. There's not a whole lot of, we don't look at ourselves from a third person perspective. So we don't get to meet ourselves and develop a relationship with ourselves in that way that you only get with a third person perspective. It's very different, but it will drastically change your life and the way that you view yourself. And there's a series of questions that you really have to answer when establishing and strengthening this relationship that you have with yourself. Who are you, right? I am. I did a video about this years ago. Arguably, I don't talk about it enough. But answering the question, I am, right? How do you identify yourself? Right? Then you have things like identity and experiences. What are the traits, or what are the words that identify what are your identifying traits? I am what? Right? How do you identify? Strong-willed, stubborn, curious, playful? I am what? Right? The top line thing that's an easy answer is I am a spiritual being living a human existence. Right? Okay, that's the top line thing to start with, and then you refine it down from there. A lot of the mistakes that people make when they answer I am is I am and then they point to their career. I am, and then they point to, like, I'm a mother, or I'm a father, or I'm a husband, I'm a wife, I'm a this, right? But when you answer I am, you should start with something that is separate and independent of your established relationships to anyone else. So this is just you. It's deeply personal, right? And that's where you get the traits like playful, curious, strong-willed, stubborn, childish, old, young, big, small, right? And be really honest about how you answer. You go through your identity and your experiences. Whatever your identity traits are, do those identity traits match up with your experiences? And then connect your identity traits with your experiences. When did you start identifying that way? Right? This is the work to do. Values versus beliefs, right? Having your list of values and your list of beliefs. This is very important because it's very difficult to stick to trying to achieve a particular goal. The reason why is because the goals that you strongest believe in are the goals that are the most connected to your values. It's very difficult to unrelentingly pursue goals that are not connected to your values. This is why this is so important, right? So a value, for example, for me personally, my top line value is wellness. Right? That's my top line value is wellness, expanding wellness, right? Contributing to enlarging the amount of wellness that is experienced in my environment and all of the people and living beings in my orbit, right? The reason why that's important is because some people pursue their own personal wellness. You got to be careful because you can pursue your own personal wellness at the expense of others. And if you're doing that, you're not really expanding or creating more wellness. You're actually just shifting someone else's wellness onto yourself. Right? So it's like this kind of parasitic relationship that you may have with other people if you go about it that way. Right? So we're talking about expanding, increasing wellness, not just shifting wellness from one person to yourself, right? This kind of like a theft of wellness, so to speak, right? We tend to know people who do this, right? Energy vampires, this kind of thing, narcissists and stuff like this, right? So my top line value is wellness, and everything extends from that, right? So whether it be freedom, freedom is subordinate to wellness, because freedom to do what, or freedom from what? Freedom can cut against wellness, or it can work to expand wellness. So I have like a tree, a hierarchy of values, and then those values connect to my beliefs. This is very important to have because it's very difficult to maintain values that cut against your beliefs. A great example of this could be you believe, or one of the values that you have is generosity. You're a generous person. However, you have a belief about people, and that belief is that people are selfish, greedy, stingy, right? If you may believe this about people, people just want to take from you. Well, if you believe that about people, that cuts into your ability to demonstrate generosity or to engage in generosity, because it leaves you with a very deep vulnerability. If that's what you think about people, why would you be generous to people when you think they just want to take from you? They just want to leech off of you. Right? So generosity can be on your spirit, it can be on your heart, it can be your most authentic self, but your thoughts and beliefs about people really cut against that. There's a massive conflict there. Right? Another one would be you value hard work, but you can believe, hey, every time I work hard, it doesn't pay off. I get screwed over, I get bad luck, things cut against me, I don't really ever get what I worked for. If you think that, well, it's going to be very difficult to engage consistently in that hard work if you think it's not going to pay off. All right? So this is why it's so important to do the mindset work, because people self-sabotage. What do you feel the most comfortable with? Right? What is the place that you feel the most comfortable? And be honest. Because if you feel comfortable with being miserable because you've been miserable for so long, well, you may sabotage any joy that comes your way, because that joy or that new happy place may feel so foreign and so different, it makes you uncomfortable and you pull away from it. You sabotage it because it's kind of terrifying, right? We're really susceptible to these things. And if that's the case, if you have these self-sabotage things because your values and your beliefs are in conflict with each other, that blows up that whole 12-week method. That's why the mindset stuff is so important. Asking the tough questions, being honest, and coming up with the answers, and being patient with yourself when doing that. So we've got nutrition, we've got training and fitness, and then we got the mindset stuff. This is the 3 pillars of Tribe by Noir, right? We got tri, which means 3, and then tribe, which means family and community. And of course, by Noir, because, well, I'm the one who organized it. Hence the name, right? Tribe by Noir. So this is a thing that I've established it, luckily, over a decade ago, kind of late in my life, but better late than never. And I've been able to refine this approach. So now it's not just that particular diet plan and approach. It's not that particular training plan with those particular training tools or those specific approaches to mindset. I've now come up with more tools in the box and been able to elaborate and expand and come up with different options, right? So originally starting off with whole food, plant-based, and then extending to more of a raw diet. Now either a fully raw, fruit-dominant, right, fruitarian diet, or a high raw diet that's fruit-dominant with typically having a cooked meal or a meal with a cooked food or a couple cooked foods in it at the end of the day. right? Fruits all day, warm savory meal at the end of the day before bed, right? Like around 4 hours or so before bed, give or take. 4 hours, some people 2 hours. Depends on the person, right? And then there's different fasting routines. And then you can have a fasting season. And then you have a season of abundance where you eat in abundance, where you don't restrict the amount you eat. Now, you don't go off the rails with what you eat, right? But you don't limit yourself as to how much you eat. So let's say, for example, in the coldest season of the month, right? You got coldest season of the year, I should say. We've got January, February, March. Great fasting season. You can do OMAD, which is 1 meal a day. You can do alternate day fasting, which is you eat 4 days a week and you fast 3 days a week, right? So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, you have full days of eating. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, you don't eat. 36-hour fast. Or you can do an in-between. So you can do a hybridized version of OMAD and alternate day fasting. 1 meal a day on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Full days of eating Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. So you can do it that way as well. It depends on how aggressively you want to fast, and it depends on what your goals are. Then you can shift from, let's say, if you did decide to do OMAD, you can shift to a modified version of alternate day fasting for the second quarter of the year, right? So you end up shedding a lot of body fat, January, February, March, you get really lean. And then you continue the process, but adopting more of a diverse diet and having more full days of eating. So basically that would be April, May, June, right? And June is like a nice, beautiful, warm month. That's when things really start opening up. And then you can eat every day. You can shift more so to, like, let's say an intermittent fasting, 16-hour fast, 8-hour eating window, maybe even a 10-hour eating window. It depends on where you're at and, how hard you want to step on the gas. And now this is where you would phase now into a high raw diet. So this could be you eat your fruits all day and a nice hearty savory meal at the end of the day, right? And then the next quarter after that, basically you can do like a fully raw fruitarian diet where you have a 10, 12-hour eating window that's more broad, more diverse. All your melons, bananas, mangoes, right? All different types of grapes, sour sop, papaya, right? All that good stuff. All your leafy green vegetables, nuts and seeds, right? And you can throw some cooked foods in there every once in a while. Maybe you do alternate day cook. Maybe you have like 2-3 cooked meals a week or something like this. It's another option as well. Living your best life in the summer, no cooking or anything like that. You just pack your bag and go, right? Pack your greens, your fruits, some nuts and whatnot. Great for, let's say if you wanted to go out hiking or camping or whatever the case is. You don't need much. No stove, no microwave. You don't need any of that. Just grab and go. Living the simple life, right? And you can switch out your seasons and your training as well, right? So, what type of resistance training do you want to do? Body weight and resistance bands? You want to get really good at calisthenics, pull-ups, dips, things like this. You want to go to a gym, lift a barbell, right? Improve your overall strength, right? Lift weights disproportionate to your body weight. Get some real raw strength. Heavy farmer's carries, deadlifts, back squats, that type of thing. You may want to run or something like that for 12 weeks. Maybe you want to run something like that for a full year. Depends on what your goals are, right? Switch it up, right? Practice a particular martial art or a sport or something like that. 12 weeks, 24 weeks. However dedicated you're willing to be, right? It doesn't really matter what you apply the 12 weeks to, right? But it works all the same. So locking in the mindset and the self-development is the top level. And then spread your legs down to all your personal goals. Financial goals, health goals, diet goals, training goals, fitness goals, all that kind of stuff. But all of that falls under the umbrella of your mindset. And so you can have a broader self-development and mindset plan that lasts you for the full 4 quarters. But within that year, that annual plan would be around 4 different segments, or maybe just 2, each lasting for 24 weeks. It depends on what your weaknesses are. It depends on where you need the most work. So this has completely revolutionized my life. I'll tell you right now, because people will say to me, how do you know so much? How did you learn so much information? It's not because I'm a genius or something like that. One habit I always maintain is I do about 20 minutes minimum of research a day. I pick a thing that I'm going to learn about. You pick an enzyme, you pick a hormone, you pick an organ, whatever the case is. You pick a metabolic illness, you pick a certain type of cancer or whatever, and you just research it for at least 20 minutes a day. Spend a week on it, depending on how deep the rabbit hole goes. And I've been doing this for my entire adult life, even more so after the 12-week method. It's truly empowering. And when you have a 12-week method, the focus on the 12-week challenges that you have, it crowds out noise. So the endless scrolling on the phone, can't do it. There's other things to do. Got to stick to the challenge. Got to stick to the method. You're less prone to waste time. You have a schedule. You have set habits. You got to stick to it. There was a point in time in my life where I can leave the house in the morning and I can go the whole day without wearing a watch. It wasn't as important to know what time it was. Now, I go to bed with my watch on. Things change very drastically when you find a winning formula. Hit the link in the description of this video to book a call with me or join the community. I have a free version of the community, which is called the Public Square, and then the paid version, which is for Tribe community members. And that version gives you the High Raw Vegan Nutrition Guide, the Tribe Flex Training Series, my alternate day fasting guide, Train, Feast, Fast, and the 3 steps to self-actualization: discovery, assessment, and actualization. I touched on it a little bit earlier in this video. In addition to that, you also get a wide variety of other member exclusive live streams that I've done, coaching calls, recipe videos, training tutorials, all that kind of stuff, right? And then we've got weekly community calls and weekly group coaching calls. The Public Square one, we have Tuesday morning at, I believe it is 9 a.m. Eastern. And then Thursday, it's 7 p.m. Eastern. Okay, so everybody in the community, both communities, is free to join on Tuesday. And then Thursday is for the Tribe community members. Right? So we do live diet planning, training, live Q&A, right? All of that kind of stuff. Sometimes diet plan adjustment, training plan adjustments, all that kind of stuff. And the community gets to get on the mic and come together, and we get to crosstalk and go around the table and talk with each other and get some good, meaningful dialogue and discussion. So it's really good stuff. So if you're interested in any of that, definitely hit the link in the description of this video. And as for the one-on-one calls, we got a full 60 minutes to get your questions answered. We go through strategy and whatever questions you have, whatever you want to talk about in relation to self-development, fasting, diet, training, and any other kind of issues that you wanted to bring up in relevance to those things. So having said that, I'll see you in the next one.